Hi, how are you?
Very well,
Uh,
Shakti.
yeah, for our readers, users, and viewers, I have somebody really important and somebody really amazing, Mark Schoen, and he's the founder of sexsmartfilms.com.
Yes.
It's an amazing platform, and if you go onto the platform, the first thing you're going to see is it says that it is the next Netflix of sex education. So that's pretty interesting, and we will talk more about Mark. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
So Mark, just I would love that we can just start as to how did this come into play? Like where or what was the journey of sex smart films?
Well, 11 years ago, I was a producer and made films dealing with sexual health. And I found that people were having trouble finding films. So I had 46 films, and I started this site, sexsmartfilms.com. And they had education, research, and therapy, and for all age groups. Well, here we are 11 years later,
Wow,
and I have 619 films.
oh, that's a big number.
And the users are individuals who can come on the site and do a pay per view, watch one film. Then I have universities that subscribe for the whole university, the faculty, the students, and they have access to the 619 films. Also, sex therapists will prescribe a particular film for a client, and the client will go to the site and watch the film that their therapist recommended, and then in their next session, they'll discuss that subject. So here we have a library of films all dealing with sexual health. Some are sexually explicit, some are geared toward children. There's a whole wide range. Some are very old. I have the films, the black and white films from the 1950s.
Oh my God, really? Yeah.
And you can see the evolution of sexual health education, where the old films only dealt with anatomy. And then as time went on, they got more sexually explicit and started dealing with sexual behavior. And today we deal with a wide range of sexual issues. From, I would say, we have a film that's based on a Danish children's book called The True Story of How Babies Are Made.
I've seen
And
it.
it's about 4 minutes long, and it's for children, 4, 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
Then we have sex therapy films that are sexually explicit, and they are geared toward adults who are dealing with sexual issues. And it lets them watch them either alone or with their partner, and they can talk about their sexual behavior. So films are tools, and they're tools to increase communication. And when you talk about sexuality, there's been a lack of communication. So the films prompt discussion and help facilitate communication about sexuality.
See, what I get from what you're saying is there is a lot of inclusion where the content of the films is concerned. So do you think there was a reason why it happened, or was it just because of the availability of the content and filmmakers?
No, I think, you have websites, for example, you have YouTube, where you can get sexual health films, but there are inaccurate, there are some very good ones, but they're not, there are some inaccurate ones. So here on sexsmartfilms.com, I guarantee that all the information is accurate.
Yeah.
And you can go to one place, and if you're looking for education for a wide age group, for sexual orientations, gay, straight, lesbian, uh, gender identities. We have films dealing with transgender. So we try to be very diverse and address. And when you think you'll cover everything, something else comes up.
Yeah.
For example, the documentary Trans, which is about transgender, which was released in 2013. I had a screening at a university here in the United States, and a student got up and said, this film didn't mention anything about non-binary. In 2013, that term didn't exist.
Yeah.
So it became a discussion point. And so as we learn more about sexual health, our vocabulary changes, and we need to keep up with it.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think it's becoming very fluid. Every day there's something new. Every day there's a new knowledge that's coming up. And that's actually the reason why also that at Tickled.live, we do not, talk about a certain sexuality, but we're talking about the sexuality as a whole. So,
yeah.
yeah, because
And I think that's very important because as we learn more, our horizons broaden and
absolutely.
new material is added,
Yeah.
which is a good thing.
Yeah. So I want to just go back a bit. So when you were a filmmaker, which you still are, you said that you were a filmmaker for sex education.
Yes.
And how did that happen? Like, was that a chosen path?
Yeah. Well, I was a health education teacher in New York.
Okay.
And in 1972, New York State mandated that we teach about sexually transmitted infections. But they said, you don't have to talk about sex. And I'll never forget the first day of class, I wrote the names of the diseases in front of the room.
Yeah.
And I told the students, these diseases are transmitted by sexual contact. And I'm teaching 12-year-olds. Hands went up. What does sexual contact mean? So I said, it's either sexual intercourse or oral genital contact. What does that mean? I spent the first 45 minutes, which was how long a class was, explaining what I meant by sexual contact.
Yeah.
The class ends, the students leave. I walk out into the hallway, and the principal of the school is standing there. And he knew this was the first day of this class. He said, how did it go? And I said, if I were a parent, I would be upset. He said, why?
Oops.
I said, I'm teaching them about sexuality by way of disease. I said, it's such a negative approach. And he said, He said, what do you think we should do? I said, I think we should start a sexual health education program. And he said, let's go for it.
Oh.
And we started this program. And I found that there were no films. So photography was my hobby. So I started making my own little slide programs. And then I kept evolving. And then when I was in graduate school at New York University, one of my professors encouraged me to make more films. And that's how it started.
Amazing story. I think sometimes it just takes one single incident to change your entire life.
Yes. Those 12-year-olds made an impact on me.
Yeah. And I think asking questions does that. Because I remember, and everybody asked me, like, how did you start Tickled.life? And it was just, I was in Amsterdam and I went to a sex toy shop and I just randomly asked that, hey, I want to buy something for my aunt. So what should I buy for her? And it was just an experiment. And when you get questions like, what does she like? And you have no idea what she likes because you yourself do not know about sex toys. That's actually like, oh my God, what kind of horrible salespeople are there? They should be telling us instead of we telling them. And that's how the research started. That's how, like people started encouraging. And yeah, so it's a learning learning experience every day. And I'm pretty sure you must be learning every day as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every time I do a film, it's
Yeah.
an education for me.
Yeah. So, so I had a question from a very different angle, because all the people we've interviewed till now, they have been working in an individual way, as in like a sex therapist or as an educationist. But you are
Yeah.
somebody who's running a platform, and there are a lot of other people who want to create a business out of their capability. So, so are you making money? That's one of the question. Or are you bootstrapped? Like what is the situation here?
Yeah, I make money, but I'm I'm not wealthy. You know, uh, I have other sources of income, and but I feel this is important. I feel it could make a lot of money because I'm not a marketer, so I don't do any marketing. It's mostly word of mouth,
Yeah.
and I find the people who do subscribe resubscribe, so I feel like it's working.
Yeah. You
And
have the validation.
yes, yes. So, and I feel it's important. And, you know, I spent a lot of money when I started it, but it's working.
So
So,
so if some a new entrepreneur comes to you asking for advice because they want to get into either sex tech or sexual well-being, sexual education, what are the few things that they need to take care of?
well, if they're doing it online the way I am, you know, the technology changes, so you need to be able to keep up with that. You need to, and here's, you need to do marketing. And I am not, in fact, I would love to find someone who wants to help me market this. And uh, I think it could be, the volume can be unlimited.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I want to produce more shorter films. And, you know, so I'm a one-man show. So it's,
So
you know, I can't do everything.
so
So,
so, so would you suggest them to have a team in place before they go ahead?
yes, I think having a team, you know, that someone's dealing with content, someone's dealing with marketing, someone's dealing with technology, you know,
Yeah.
those are the key areas.
Absolutely. I remember initially it was so difficult. I've been on it for 2 years, but just because I was alone. But thankfully, we've been able to create a team. And that is why, our updates have started coming almost every week. And like I just shared with you, that we have few announcements also that are coming on board. And obviously, your marketing will be taken care of. And that is why Tickled Life is there, to help others grow.
Well, thank
Um, yeah. So I actually had another very interesting questions. How do you find the content? I know that you create them, but what about the rest of the 600 plus movies?
Well, there are a little over 200 public service announcements and condom commercials from 52 different countries.
Okay.
And there was a company that, if let's say you were making a toothpaste commercial in India,
Yeah.
you could go to this company and say, I'd like to see all the toothpaste commercials that were made in India in the last 3 years, and they would supply them to you. Well, I called them and I told them about sexsmartfilms.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I want all your public service announcements and commercials that have to do anything with sexuality. So I had breast cancer, I had condom commercials, HIV public service announcements. And I have over 200 of them from 52 different countries. And they said, are you going to only use them for educational purposes? And I said, yes. And they said, help yourself.
Oh,
They gave them to me. And I had this going for years. And all of a sudden, they went out of business and they disappeared. So I still get them every now and then, but I used to get 10 at a time. And so I have commercials from India. I have one where these transgender people are on the streets doing things for people. And anyway, so
it's about collaboration.
Yeah, and if you want to take a cross-cultural look at sexual health, it's wonderful. Yeah. Another feature I have is there's a feature on the site where if you have a film, you can upload it to the site. And in the description, so if you're a therapist and you upload a film, you could put a link in the description to your site. So I let them use it to give information to the viewers and promote themselves. So I get films like that. What else? I have sex therapy films, which I've produced. Research films, dealing with sexual content. So that gives you a sense of the areas.
So you think it's more of a collaborative initiative?
A collaboration, in this is important.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's true. So, like in these many years, you must have learned a lot. Do you think that the sexual education media or the content is changing? Is it becoming more open, or is it still very construed with what was there, say, 20 years back?
Well, the unfortunate thing, and if a child goes onto the internet and looks for sexual information, chances are they're going to end up at an adult content site, pornography.
True.
And that, to me, is a problem.
Yeah.
That a child's first information about sexuality should not be an adult film.
True.
They're made to titillate. They're made to entertain. They are not made to educate 10-year-old children.
Absolutely.
And in the United States, they're saying the average American sees adult content, pornography, on the internet between the ages of 11 and 14.
That's too young.
Yeah, it certainly shouldn't be their first source of sex information. So, if you ask me what should we be doing?
Yeah,
I think it should begin at home. And parents, I just recently had a college class, a group of college students answer 2 questions. What were the names that you used for the genitals in your home? And how old were you when you saw your first pornographic film? Well, very few people use the correct names for genitals. They use terms like pee-pee, hoo-ha, private parts. I mean, I could, if I had 100 people answering this question, I probably got 50 or 60 different names. So that tells you something. We teach our children that sex is something you're not supposed to talk about.
Yeah. So
we need to start at home, and then it needs to continue in school, which, there are Scandinavian countries. I think Sweden has a national sex education program. It starts in primary school. And number one, they learn about sexuality. and they learn that it's supposed to be a pleasurable experience. Their teen pregnancy rate is low. Their disease rate is low. They're taught about condom use. So we have examples where we show that this kind of education works, but we've got to start doing it.
Yeah. But also, like, to add to it, I just want to know, like, how interesting or how entertaining are the videos, sex ed movies now? Are they interesting enough so that if a child is seeking them, he would be able to understand and connect with it? Or is it too, too specific as to what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing? Because I remember while growing up, the sex education movie that we saw, I still remember it. But that really wasn't the right way that they were teaching. Like, we got bored after like 5 minutes. Like, what were we seeing? So has it changed? Has it become more interesting? Or you think that there's a lot need to be done from movie making point of view?
I think there are some good films out there, but if someone said to me, let's make some more, there are a lot to do. And I think if you look at any subject, let's say astronomy, what do you teach a child? They ask questions.
Yeah,
So if they ask a question about the moon, you'll show them a picture of the moon. You'll tell them every detail of the moon.
absolutely.
So with sexuality, we have to ask them what they want. I remember when I was teaching the 12-year-olds, I had a box in the room. It was a question box. So if they were embarrassed to ask a question, they could write a question on a piece of paper, put it in the box. At the end of every class, I would try to answer 2 questions from the box. And, so I think we need to let them know that we're askable. It's okay to ask us.
And that is not coming through the movies that are being created. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you saw that film, The True Story of How Babies Are Made.
It.
Yes, so we need more things like that. And that was written by Per Holm Knudsen in Denmark in 1972. And in 1973, it was translated to English. I did a book about 30 years ago called Belly Buttons Are Navels, which is still available on Amazon. And it teaches children the names of body parts from head to toe, including the genitals. And I remember when it was released, it was so controversial because it identified the clitoris. And people said, you're telling them they have a clitoris? And it's a body part.
Yeah.
And so,
it's actually depressing that something which is so integral to you, you're not able to talk about it openly.
Yeah, it's such an important part of life.
Yeah.
And it should be just a source of pleasure. But I think without the true understanding, you miss out on some of the pleasure.
Absolutely. That's life. What are your future plans?
Well, I'm working with developing a documentary that has to do with some of the things we've been talking about. Early sex education and the fact that most Americans, their earliest sex education are adult films or pornography on the internet. And trying to make a case for early sexual health education at home and in school.
Do you think sex education is just important while you're growing up as an adolescent, or you still think, because you go into colleges and you must be taking different classes as well, that even adults are not completely aware of their sexuality?
Oh, absolutely. Adults are not completely aware of their sexuality. I mean, I have a sex therapist who told me she had a 60-year-old woman who did not know what a clitoris was and didn't know its purpose in her sexual pleasure. So, and in the sensate focus exercises, which are the exercises developed by Masters and Johnson for sex therapy, the first exercise is on sexual anatomy. The assumption is you don't understand your anatomy. Let's go over it. And in the sensate focus films we have, the first one is sexual anatomy and physiology, which is key, that you have to know your own anatomy and your partner's.
So who, according to you, are the best filmmakers who are working in sex education right now? Or have you seen a video or a documentary or even a movie which you think that, that really got the real essence?
There's one documentary that came out of New Zealand, and it's it's on intersex.
Yeah, and I had sex yesterday, yeah.
And it's called Intersection. Intersex with ION at the end.
Okay.
And I think it's a really important film to understand this subject and where we've gone wrong with it.
Yeah, true.
So,
yeah, I think people are just not aware of what is happening. And especially when a child is born and you do not know exactly, you just try to just demarcate, okay, this kid is either a male or a female, which I think is going to take a longer time than expected to.
Well, if you watch the film, I mean, I'll give it away.
Yeah.
There was a time, and it still happens, where a doctor will make a decision at birth and do some surgery to make the child the gender he believes that child is. And what they found was 50% of the time,
it was wrong.
The doctor was wrong. So it's tragic.
It's really tragic. Meeting people, talking to people, and reading now every day something about sexuality and various facets of sexuality has just somehow made me question a lot of things and has personally made me a better person. That's my opinion. What changes have come into your life in past 11 years?
Well, I think I've learned that the diversity is more diverse than I thought.
Absolutely.
And, there's a quotation from Oscar Wilde, and it's, you have to be yourself because everyone else is taken.
True.
And I think that is so true, especially when it comes to sexuality, because no one can tell you how to feel and what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, true. And in fact, sometimes the thing is because we've been oppressed so much as a society that we are also not ready, or we do not have the courage to even know ourselves.
Yeah, that I have a friend who does transgender surgery.
Okay.
And a man came to her who was 85 years old and wanted surgery to become a female. And one of her first questions was, why did you wait till you're 85? And he said, I got married very young. I loved my wife. I had 2 children. And he said, I would never do anything to hurt my wife. And his wife passed away. And he said, I want to die my authentic self. So they did the surgery.
Yeah. Stories like these just make you realize that you really do not know things in this world. That every day is a new day in the real sense. Every day it's going to just tell you something that you've not known maybe few hours back.
This is so true.
Yeah. So before we end, few quick questions. One is if people want to go and check out some amazing sex education centric videos, what is the URL that they will go for?
sexsmartfilms.com.
Okay. And if they want to read the book that you were talking about, which was controversial, which you wrote, I think in 1970.
No, it was in the 80s.
Oh, in the 80s.
It's called Belly Buttons, one word, are Navels, Navels, and it's on Amazon Prime.
And last thing is, because we talked a lot about children, we talked a lot about adolescents. So something like a parting thing for parents, maybe parents and society, that how should they raise their children so that they are sexually more active or they're more open and responsive. That will be great, and that will be the end of us here.
Well, there was a sex educator named Saul Gordon who passed away. And his advice was, you have to be an askable parent. You have to let your children know that sex is something that's okay to talk to me about. And what he recommended is, if there was something on television, comment on it and get your children to comment on it. If there was something in a magazine or a newspaper, do the same thing. Let them know that this is an acceptable subject to talk about in our home. So be an askable parent.
Be an askable parent, be an askable adult. But thank you so much, Mark. It was lovely having you, and hope we can do this again.
Shakun,
Thank you.
thank you. My
Thank you.
pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.